So let's begin with the rather obvious observation that you have an identity. That may be the last obvious thing you hear this morning. It might be the first. Presently, we leave our fear of risk behind. But we're safe here. For you not only have an identity, you have a capacity for identity. More voluminous than the you that you've set for yourself. You have a capacity for identity greater than your identity. And you always will. Your capacity for identity is virtually limitless. Your capacity for you. You can think about the story of the birds in one way as a story of identity. The green mortal bird of limits and the limitless blue bird of the capacity for identity. So identity is the mortal ego, and the capacity for identity is the limitless soul. I mean, who do you think you are? Likely, you think you are somebody, and that idea, soundly enough, is based upon your experience, but it is not fixed. You are not now who you were. But I suggest identity is not only progressive, but expansive. Identity can be broadened. You may have heard me say that a spiritual experience, the way that I define a spiritual experience, is when we perceive our connections increasing such that our identities are open and expanded. I want to be careful and draw a distinction between accumulation, addition, and progression and expansion. The first is gathering in, stacking on. Expansion is moving out. So I'm talking about an expansion of identity as the definition of a spiritual experience. I'm not sure why the distinction between expansion and progression is important to me, but it is. Maybe it's the difference between something egocentric and something universalist. And then here's a neat trick, or an interesting problem. I feel like I understand more than I have experienced. Do you ever feel that way? But that is not logically possible, and reveals to us a truth that understanding is itself an experience. Understanding is an exercise of consciousness. Understanding is how identity is constructed. So then the question that occurred to me was, is understanding? We talked about empathy earlier. Is understanding a gateway to spiritual experience? Is understanding a spiritual experience in and of itself a gateway to opening and expanding our identities? I mean, who do you think you are? May I tell you? Because there's an answer to that question. Or perhaps not who you are, but rather what you are. We, I, ourself, yourself, is a web of contexts, an interconnected and so interdependent matrix of contexts. And this is attested to by Buddhism and neuroscience and Sufism, the branch of Islam, and some Christian and Jewish traditions, and I think common sense. We are a matrix of conditions. We are none of us a single thing, a distinct individual being. Rather, we are each of us conglomerations. We are each of us conglomerations of our contexts, our heritages, our histories, our cultures, and our biographies, and our biologies. Remove these, and there is nothing left. No us. No I. And even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense anymore. Without contingent contexts, I ceases to exist. Now, on the other hand, if we add all of these factors together, conglomerate our context, then not only do we produce an identity, an I, but it might be that the sum of our contexts, heritages, histories, cultures, biologies, and experiences produces something more than their sum. A whole that is greater than the parts. A consciousness or a soul. A most unique manifestation of transcendence made of the most common, immanent materials. And if there is a whole that is greater than the sum of our conditions, if there is a soul, can it exist beyond the conditions that produced it? That is to say, can the emergent quality produced by our contingencies, our experiences, and the medium of our experiences, our bodies, can our soul exist when our bodies no longer do? When the contingencies evaporate, can the sum that is greater than their whole exist? Some say yes and claim experience. I had coffee accidentally, just a guy in the Starbucks, he was reading a book. I said, "What are you reading?" He told me what it was, and that led to a conversation where he told me he had a after-death experience. Huh. Interesting coffee. Some say no, there's no soul beyond the body. Even if there is a soul in the body, there is no soul beyond the body. There are various ways to answer this, but one question to ask is, how can anything exist after the ingredients that made it have dissolved? Is that even possible? And actually, yes, it's possible. Sound does this. And look, I'm not entirely sure I believe what I am saying. but I do love to wonder about it. And if I don't believe it, I reserve the space to consider it and let it compel me. So in that manner, maybe I'm gaining an understanding of something. In that manner, I can muse that if souls we have, maybe we can say this: my soul is a sound wave. My soul is sound. Or at least has some properties in common. And so taking the poetic and beautiful step, my soul is sound. And light also does this. The twinkling gleams in the night sky reach us, some of them long after the conditions that produce them have burst into new things unseen. My soul is light and sound, particle and wave and momentum. Did you know that light needs substance to be revealed? If you were in an empty room without windows, without any light, and also without walls, so you're in a room without walls, a dark and empty room without walls, without even dust, and you turned on a light, or if you were in the eternal night of deep space and held a flashlight beam before your eyes, you would not see it. In space, you do not see the light of the sun as it blazes past your eyes. In this room, you do not see the light of the bulbs. But if in deep space, if you raised your hand into that beam of light, then you would immediately see not only your hand, but light too. Where before it was only dark, suffused with invisible luminescence. Light alone is invisible. The things we do not see. And the cosmos is awash in light. And again, poetically, if our soul is like light echoing through time beyond the contingencies of its origin, and the cosmos is awash in light generated by other contingent matrices whose contingencies too have long dissolved, then perhaps it is we who evidence the light. Maybe we are the evidence of soul. Maybe you cannot see his soul until it animates the matrix of a being. Or maybe because this is fun, and possibly more than fun. Maybe there is but one soul, or soul force passing through all being like sunlight pouring through the cosmos, and we are each like musical instruments, inert until it passes through us like breath. The word spirit, by the way, comes from the word breath. And so the light and the sound, the breath of the cosmos passes through us, and we make a soul sound or a particular soul that itself emerges from and beyond contingencies to add to the harmonic breath of the universe passing through other instruments, other matrices. Light reveals and sound peals only upon reflection. So this is a reflection, a speculative reflection, no doubt. Spiritual poetics. So let's come back to slightly firmer ground and recall that our contexts, our heritages, our histories, our cultures and biologies, things that we can actually see and talk about, these are not discrete. Our matrices are not discrete. That, I don't think, is speculation. We are connected with other conglomerations of context, other matrices. For what are our heritages, our histories, our cultures, and biologies, if not matrices of congregated contexts themselves, ad infinitum? So we are all entwined, all connected, all interdependent, all variations coming, going, emerging, and resounding variations of one interdependent whole. All variations of one interdependent whole. That light, that sound, that om, that cosmic breath moving through what we perceive as time, moving through what we perceive as ourselves. So we may close our eyes and see, understand beyond our experience, expanding our identity by breathing to rhyme our action with the action of our animator, or by considering a cloud, or by flexing our wings through empathy. Understand beyond experience by listening to music, by grokking a poem, by feeling the pain of the oppressed and the ecstasy of the free. Expanding our identities, not to control, but to open to the senses and sensibilities of other beings, other matrices, other congregations of contexts of which we are a part. And so we fly with the crane, and so even the phrase each other makes no sense, and so only the mountain remains. But if sound is soul and spirit is breath, then what is the sound of a mountain breathing?